can't just have a doctor, you also have to have a surgeon. You also have to have somebody who can, who can get in there and take care of something that was probably, look, I mean, that's why barbers had that whole thing about barbers and why you have the red and white out in front of a barbershop, because they were bloodletters too. I mean, those were things that people felt you had to have, but it's more of a surgeon practitioner in addition to somebody who would prescribe medicine or who would diagnose illness. But there's also a surgeon there too. So it wasn't enough just to have a doctor. You also had to have a bloodletter. I would say the equivalent today would be, you can't just have a doctor, you also have to have a hospital. But you have to have medical stuff, yeah.
One of the things on the list, there's nothing that speaks to death, funerals, burial, cemeteries.
Yeah. What's interesting about it is that most of the things that are there, the first three, or not the first three, but three of them in a row, the synagogue, bathhouse, and bathroom, are all physical spaces. The rest of the stuff is not based on a physical space. The cemetery, as Hal's pointing out, is very important because you had to have a cemetery in order to bury people. Even before Jews would build a synagogue, they'd oftentimes build a cemetery, create a cemetery. And of course, the other thing that they would do is create a mikveh. Even before they had a synagogue, they'd have a mikveh. So those buildings, those spaces were necessary. But the interesting thing about it is the focus on this is, for the most part, again, not so much about the spaces, with the exception of, again, the synagogue and the functioning places of hygiene, if you will, which were the bathhouse and the bathroom. But yeah, it's not listed there separately, a cemetery, which you'd think would be, based on what we know of Judaism and Jewish tradition, that was the first thing we built, the first thing we consecrated when we came to an area was a cemetery. Yeah.
Unless I'm mistaken, there's one thing that Santa Clarita lacks on this list.
You're jumping already, but that's okay. That's fine. We were going to get there. Well, you know what? Hold on to that. We'll come back to it, because that's where we're going. That's where we're going. We have a good blood letter.
I saw ritual slaughter.
Yeah.
And from my knowledge of the Torah, I remember that we weren't really supposed to perform like ritual slaughters.
So they're talking about a shochet, a kosher butcher. But it's a very interesting point that you just made, because actually there are different versions of this that don't actually have that on here. It's interesting. I'm not saying that because I'm a vegetarian. There are versions of this text that have slightly different order and layout of that. I can't remember what's on that list that doesn't have the slaughter, but that's an example of something. You don't have to have a building to have a shochet, to have a ritual butcher, but you had to have that person. And that may be what you were going to say was what we're missing from Santa Clarita. I might be wrong. Is that what you're going to say?
You want me to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, my wife pointed out she thought there was not a mikveh.
There isn't a mikveh either. That's why I was going to say it's definitely something that we don't have that would be nice if we had. Yes, Don.
Were circumcisions done by physicians, or was it?
No, they could be done by, and actually, according to Jewish law, it's one of the things that could be done by a woman, by the way, too, who was trained in doing it. It's one of the few things that actually women were allowed to do. It was, again, not necessarily like the first choice for a mohel, but if they had, you definitely were allowed to go to a woman. It's a good point, though. It's not there. It's not there as a... I would tell you that it's probably because there were more people who could do it than a doctor bloodletter. Though you could say, let's hope that those were the people that they let. I don't even know, how could I possibly have just said that? But yes, we hope that the bloodletterer was the one who was maybe doing the cutting. But I mean, like, we have a really good bloodletterer. Yes, thank you. Yeah, technically speaking, when you have a bris, it's the father is sending the moil to be his agent as the person. So we don't know how often it was that the dads actually did it, how often they entrusted that to somebody else, or to have, like we do, and some people nowadays, by the way, have reclaimed that tradition. There are a lot of moils who encourage people to do that incision, to do that final cut. They'll set it all up and then let the father do it. We have some kids here right now, so I don't want to scare them. But the issue is that it's now we kind of come back to that where people are given the choice to make that cut. I was very lucky. I had 3 daughters, so I never had to be faced with making that cut. Yeah, Herman, yeah.
You mentioned the word veins, which to me is more physical than the spiritual. And I can see that most of the things that you mentioned here are things. But how would a Torah scholar, how would a city, or because I would think that place where they're going to reside in some either town, city, or something, how could that happen unless you already had Torah scholars there at the time to create
Yep.
the spiritual part that these things may represent?
All right. So everybody heard Herman, hopefully. It's a good place to then launch into the reason why I brought this up, the relevancy of this, though it's obviously interesting just to see the history of it. So Herman, finish your idea then. How is that relevant to Santa Clarita?
We have a lot of work to do.
So, but correct. Yes, that is true. There is another point here, though, which is that people have to be willing to be pioneers, right? So to follow up on Herman's idea, somebody has to do the work of starting this stuff. Somebody's got to be the first, right? Somebody's got to be the people who are the first people who do this. So Herman, thankfully for people like you, and there's other people here in this room who've been here for 30, now 40 plus years. I was going to have everybody stand up who's been here for 40 plus years, but I think there'd be like 3 or 4 people that'd be standing up right now. The reality is that there had to be people back in the 80s to be here, and there were some people in the 70s, and as I've told people before, my uncle Milt Diamond was out here in the 50s when there was literally nobody at the Newhall General Store. But again, there was also not a Jewish community. He didn't move out here because of the Jewish community. He moved out here because he was raised, my Uncle Milt and my grandmother were raised in very rural Minnesota. When I'm talking about very rural Minnesota, we're talking about like cities, towns with like 500 people up by North Dakota, and they were the local cow merchants and Jewish general store operators out on the prairie, and so my Uncle Milt was used to that. But fortunately, by the time you guys got here and other people, there was starting to be a cohesion, and starting to be a group of Jews that were living out here in Santa Clarita. But yeah, we're going to get to that. Yes. So let me ask you the question, because this is the point of studying this. Do we have enough Jewish infrastructure in Santa Clarita? No, I'm asking you first. Okay. So let me ask the question for people who, I heard some people saying, we have work to do and there's things that we're missing. So based on this list, but also adding to it your own take from what we need in the Jewish community today. So I guess you have to ask yourself the question first. What would be the things on our list today that a Jewish community would need to have? So if you made your own list of 10 things, and again, you could say access to these things. And again, I guess it's a personal decision how far the access has to be. Look, we were just talking 10 minutes ago about the rally we had on Thursday. So somebody said to me, I thought it was at Westwood. There was one in Westwood. There was Wednesday night at Westwood. And there were ones around the country. There were rallies around the country. Stand With Us sent out an e-blast with all the stuff that was going on. So on Wednesday, I thought to myself, nobody from Santa Clarita is going to drive to Westwood for a rally. So I said, we've got to have one. And so I said, somebody's got to do it. I'm going to do it right now. And so Rabbi Siegel said, you put it together really fast. I was putting it together even faster. I spoke to Choni, and I said, can we do one right now? Can we do one tonight? He says, I've got classes. We're doing something at Chabad. Wednesday night, I said, okay, let me take a deep breath. We'll wait a day. We'll do it on Thursday. It'll give us a chance to get it out. It's probably better. But I wanted to have it the same night that they were having in LA, they were having in Houston and around the country. So we ended up doing it on Thursday. But my feeling at that moment was, look, if we have a Jewish community and we have a strong enough Jewish community, we should have our own rally, not expect people to go into the city. So my answer as far as a lot of things would be, I don't want people going over the hill to be Jewish. So that's my answer to a lot of these things. But to get back to the question I posed before, because there's a good point of like, what can we have here with the demographics that we have? But, and again, do we have to have a sleepaway overnight Jewish camp when we have one at Alonim and Ramah and Hess Kramer, JCA? Hopefully they'll all be rebuilt, God willing. That those are camps that are close enough that if you want a Jewish sleepaway camp, which I would argue, 2 of my 3 daughters were very into Jewish camping. That's one of the things that Jewish communities would have today. I just threw out one. I gave you one. Come up with other ones.
That's probably like a Jewish community center.
Yes.
I'm just kind of wondering, was their sort of thought back then as it was now that, hey, if we build it, they will come? In other words, was the thought, okay, we need to have these certain things even to get started, or, if we're able to have these things at a certain time, we'll be able to have a stronger Jewish community.
All right. So hopefully everyone heard what Don said. JCC would be one of the things that we think about today. And then do you build it first and then hope people come out? It's a good question, right? It's the question, of course, the Field of Dreams position. So that's a great point. So by the way, I just want to point out, there's no JCC in the San Fernando Valley anymore. Well, there is, but they have a storefront. But all the JCCs, as you know, closed in the valley over the last 15 years. San Fernando Valley, with 500,400,000 Jews, doesn't have a functioning JCC with a pool or a gym or any of the things that used to have, or a preschool. I mean, I'm just telling you, that's sad. And we tried to keep them afloat as well as that was happening. And it's sad. As people know, I went to North Valley Jewish Community Center as a preschool kid, so I have great feelings about JCCs, and it was very sad. Yeah. Brandeis is a great Jewish institution, and of course there's camp, there's summer camp there, there's institutes there. It's not too far away. Yeah, it's a great institution that we're close by to. Yeah.
If there was a demand for a mikvah, there'd be a mikvah. And that someone would do it, they say, okay, let's raise some money, let's have a mikvah. And I think that if there's enough of a demand, then someone would come out there and we're not going to build mikvahs, no one's going to go to it. And so I think the issue is with a kosher butcher. A kosher butcher would be here if there was enough
So-
if there's enough of demand, I'm a believer in free enterprise, then they would do it. They would build.
So let's focus on the positive, though. Would be on your list of what a Jewish community needs today to be a Jewish community, a self-sustained Jewish community?
I think the most important thing is what we have now is we have a vibrant, functioning synagogue in Santa Clarita. That's obviously, to me, the most important thing. Your shul, our shul,
So synagogues,
yes.
okay, good. Somebody else, yes.
Yeah, I would like to see more kosher products available at the supermarket, especially at Passover. We have to go into the valley to look for kosher cereal or whatever it is that we want.
Yes. I was on the phone with Ralph's, actually, my good friend Jim Small and I went to the Dodger game about 3 weeks ago, and he's in charge of ethnic foods for Ralph's, which, by the way, as you know, is controlled by Kroger now. So the decisions aren't only made at the local level, they're made on a national level. They sold very well their Passover goods this year. They were very happy. I think they had like 95% sales. They're ecstatic over their kosher food. I told them they did not have a very good selection in Santa Clarita. He apologized. They're going to try to do better next year. They messed up because they did sell. But you know what they didn't sell? Does anyone want to guess what didn't sell at Passover this year? Anywhere in Ralph's. Not just Ralph's, but Kroger, nationwide. Does anyone want to guess what didn't sell this year at Passover? One product, and it's a, what? Yeah. But not matzah. I want to be more specific. The big 5-pound boxes of matzah, the collections of matzah, because people didn't have seders with a lot of people. Now, I told them that 3 months ago. I said, do not overload on those because people are not still having big seders. So nobody wants to buy 20 boxes of matzah this year. But they still ordered them because that's what they get, and they got stuck with pallets of matzah that, of course, they can't sell. They can't sell that during the year. They can sell their gefilte fish during the year. Yes, sorry. We'll work our way down. Yeah, yeah.
I grew up in LA, like the LA Greater area, and I miss just having lots of little Jewish specific shops, whether it was the bakery out there, the Schwartz's Bakery. There were lots of little bookstores where I could get a seat, and my son grew up in seat, and I don't want to drive all the way down to LA to buy a seat, and I don't know where to buy, not like a Tallis, but just the daily seat. I don't know where to buy that here. And I want to buy them online because I don't know if they're kosher, and then what if they're not, and all of that. So, and I also remember one of the field trips that we went on for our school was we would make the round bike and like shmura matzahs every year, and I hate the square box ones. I mean, they're yummy for daily use, but I miss for like Pesach having the handmade shmura matzahs. There's just that level that the box stuff.
Yeah. So the reality is, as you point out, there's really only one part of LA that has that type of, I mean, you have to go to Pico Robertson to find that type of vibrant Jewish street where you can go for a few blocks and see more than one place. There's really not a lot. I mean, even in North Hollywood, there's some stuff, there's stuff that comes and goes. There was that area around Whitsett and Magnolia where we had a few places, but it's very hard for these places to stay in business, and really isn't much. I mean, other than, again, I was down at Milky Way last week, and you forget how many places there are, on a couple blocks down Pico. So, yeah, it's that we're really missing, that kind of vibrant Jewish community, but there is not a lot. Even in the state of California. I mean, we're talking about San Francisco, San Diego, not a lot. Herman, yeah.
So does, is it a prerequisite, for demand, Jews to be created before a scholar would ever be in our community?
I think the issue is one of what I think about. I don't know if it keeps me up at night, but it has kept me up at night. Because I wouldn't have slept in the last 23 years. Is how do we make Santa Clarita a more attractive community for Jews to move out to, right? So we want more Jews to move out to. And I share this with you now because, number one, we're coming out of a situation where this is an inflection point of time where people are trying to figure out how to recreate community. I'm not going to share with you anything that you don't know, that synagogues are struggling across the country. We have two very large synagogues, formerly very large synagogues in the San Fernando Valley, as you know, that just merged, created something new out of the reality of what's going on in the Jewish community. And the reality is that we know that this area of Santa Clarita is going to have a huge influx of people over the next couple of years, right? So as 5 Points is developed, as homes on this side of Santa Clarita, again, 5 Points is over by Magic Mountain, but over on this side of town, there's more homes coming in over on the west side of the 5 in our area, a little closer to us, and the Newhall, Stevenson Ranch side. As these homes are built, what's going to make people from the Jewish community feel comfortable to move out here? My vision when I moved out here was to help create a community that people would actually want to move out to if they were Jewish. Now, I say I'm hoping that people will give this a chance, and to say, look, we need you to come out here. We're still building. We're still growing. We're going to go through another phase of development. And I think most importantly, in my take, is that we have to be, the thing that we have is our people, because we don't have a lot of the institutions, but we have to continue to have a very welcoming group of people, which I think we have, and we need to do an even better job of welcoming and being there for families as they move out here to make ourselves communities that, and by communities I mean the synagogues, places where we're attracting people and encouraging people to be a part of, to be engaged in, because when people come in and feel welcome, then this community will be strengthened. And that's I have to tell you, I mean, in the near term, that's all we can do, because we're not going to have the mikvah soon. We're not going to have the JCC soon. I'm hoping one day we will. Believe me, there's nobody who hopes more that these things will be here one day in Santa Clarita than me. But it is, but we also have to be realistic of what we have now. And what we have now are some wonderful people. And we have one of the best bloodletterers in the town, in the whole city, right here, in our synagogue right now, Mike Schwartz. Thank you, Mike. So he's got his knives with him at all times. So anybody else have any other questions? I want to turn it over. Yes.
One of the things besides a kosher areas for food, a nice kosher restaurant, or even something like a Tel Aviv grill. If you can roll a Tel Aviv grill out there, you're setting a standard for other Jews. You realize there are Jews out there that will be kosher.
I will only tell you that it's been my vision and hope to create a type of place where people would be able to eat together as Jews, to live together. My goal was to create a senior housing facility out here too, that people could have their families live nearby. I had my grandmother lived at Jewish Home for the Aging in Reseda, but I would love to have had a place out here by now that we obviously have a nice sized Jewish community at Oakmont and at some of the other places, Atria, but it would be great if we had our own place out here too. I would put out that that's one of the things today that we also need to have in the Jewish community, a place for us. I mean, again, it used to not be the case. Seniors lived with their families, but it's not what happens now, and we need to have a place for that. I would say preschools today are something that we need, but there's also several things today that we didn't have in the ancient world, and now we have our modern version of. Any other comments or questions? Oh, yes, over here. Okay, Joanne, or Nancy, whoever. Nancy.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's a bit of a Pandora's box, but I personally, from what I perceive looking around, we do have enough Jewish community here to have more. So I think the question is, why not? Why don't we? Like I said, it's a Pandora's box.
It's not. No, listen. I mean, it's part of. My feeling always has been that in order for, people would always tell me, why doesn't Steven Spielberg give us money? I'm like, what universe do you live in that people just write out checks to a Jewish community that they have no connection to? I mean, sometimes there are miracles that happen. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but we can't wait around for somebody to write a check to us. My feeling was always that, especially in America, and we don't have an archdiocese. I mean, if we had that type of situation like they do in England and other countries, you can have other parts of the country help support the new parts that are developing. We don't have that. We also have more freedom. That's a trade-off. But what would we, we have to create value for people where they feel that participating in these things are things that they would need. So preschools became one of those things where people said, I've got to go to I've got to have preschool, so I might as well have my kid be at a Jewish preschool. Those are things that created value for people and had them, and I would argue that's what a senior housing facility could do, is create a facility that could be like a JCC. My goal was to kind of create a multi-generational campus where people would, you can't pay for a JCC anymore by having a gym because everyone joins gyms. It's 24-hour fitness, everything else. You have to be realistic about what people need or want, or what they're going to pay for. Senior housing is something they're going to pay for. They have to. They have to pay for it somewhere. So I might as well create it and have a place where you can create a Jewish community around that. I also had a dream of doing that around a school too, but it wasn't in other people's plans. So that is the reality of creating value and necessity, if you will. So that's my take on it. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we need stuff for, like young Jewish teens or young adults. Like when I was in New York, we had Hillel, and then after college, I was in B'nai B'rith Jewish singles, and that's where I met my husband. But I don't think we have those kinds of things out here for the younger Jewish people to get together.
It is a challenge, but it is something that we have to keep working on. And also to have a Hillel for our COC and Cal Arts students too, because we do have college students that are out here too. So you're right. You need to have those. Anything else? Well, oh yes, one more thing. Yeah, Herman.
Rabbi, I don't want to be controversial or anything, so please don't take it as anything, but, the Pew study that I'm sure you're familiar with has indicated over the last 15 years or so that the only part of Judaism that has been increasing over those years has been the more observant parts of Judaism versus less observant. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, the Pew study you're referring to that Herman's talking about just came out. It was released just a couple weeks ago. But there's nothing in that study that's surprising. I could have told you that 20 years ago. That was the fact that the Orthodox community is growing, the other non-Orthodox movements are shrinking. The demographics don't bode well because we in the non-Orthodox world, and I say we because I'm not part of the Orthodox world, I'm not part of Reform or Conservative. I've never affiliated as a rabbi with a movement, but I know I'm not Orthodox. And I can tell you that our community in the non-Orthodox world we're not having enough children and we're not replacing ourselves. So yes, that's a problem. But there's nothing surprising about that. That's not controversial, Herman. That's a fact. So the question is, what do you then do about that fact? And how do you respond to that fact? And so I think, there's things that I'm willing to do that people are not willing to do. I'm also not willing to give up. But I do think we do, to some extent, we have a little bit of a challenge at the birth rate, and that's what the Pew study needs to be accompanied by. The facts, and you've seen it because if you paid attention to the news in the last few months, they've been releasing the birth rates in this country. And everyone thought it was going to go up during the pandemic, and it didn't. It went down another 4%. So everybody thought there were going to be babies born during the pandemic because no one had anything else to do. Guess what? People didn't want to have children during the pandemic either. So it's not happening. The birth rate's been going down consistently since about 2007, and it's now at a rate that it's the lowest in something like 70 or 80 years. So it's really, really a problem. It's a crucial problem, and in the Jewish community, it's even more amplified. So people have been delaying pregnancy. They've decided in some cases to not have children, and so these are demographics that we're going to be facing. It's why the schools in Santa Clarita are going to start to have a real crisis, and we're going to have to start mothballing campuses. I mean, I don't know why people aren't addressing that. It's pretty obvious. You look at the declining enrollment, they're going to have to close some schools in Santa Clarita. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's not controversial what you said. What's controversial is how do you respond to it and not again upset people, but have them buy in and not react to it negatively. I do want to finish on a positive note, which is Rabbi Akiva, who says at the bottom, according to Rabbi Akiva, the city must also have a variety of fruits, because varieties of fruit illuminate the eyes. And I think what's so beautiful about that is that this city, actually, this community, we're standing on an area that was literally an orchard at one point, not this building, but down the street. There was Valencia oranges being grown all across this valley. And for people like me who grew up in the San Fernando Valley, would come out here and go out and ride around or walk around and remember what this valley looked like. This is a place where there were trees, a lot of fruit trees, and there still are a decent amount. We have to plant them, right? Because a lot of them got ripped up, but we still can plant them. And what's nice about this teaching of Rabbi Akiva, who was an amazing man and was obviously martyred, he reminded us that we also have to have enjoyment in our life. We have to live in a community that gives us joy and that has nice things in it, and not just Jewish things, but things that also help us be sustained, that we can take enjoyment with, and that we can see as beautiful parts of our world. And we definitely have an obligation to keep that going here in Santa Clarita. So I hope everyone has some fruit for Shavuot. It's not a requirement like some of the other stuff, like the dairy stuff, but we're supposed to have sweet things too. So have some fruit, and I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Siegel. Thank you, everybody, for talking a little bit about what we need to have in the community, and I think it's going to hopefully help the rabbi in his teaching. I hope.
Me too. Thank you, Rabbi Blazer. Can somebody help me hand these out? I'm going to move pretty quickly, if you don't mind. Robin, don't forget the front here. So the two things while those are being passed out, I'm going to say is that I did buy a 5-pound brick of matzah. So if anyone wants to buy some off me, I've got plenty. And regarding the kosher, there were 2 kosher restaurants in Santa Clarita that maybe we forget about, and that's Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. Full-on kosher restaurants that unfortunately during the pandemic, they stopped serving kosher food. And if you walked up, it was labeled that they stopped serving kosher because there just wasn't the ability to do it anymore. So if we have to start, we have to show that we are interested, and the single best way you can do that is go back to Coffee Bean, buy your coffee from Coffee Bean, and just ask if they have the kosher products, because they're all kosher, but they moved out. I believe my Leah and I were driving back from something. We stopped to get some food, and we were gonna have they have these kosher sandwiches, but they were no longer kosher, and it was labeled. So we can actually continue. We have kosher restaurants here. They were kosher. They have the infrastructure. We can only build from what's already here, and I'm very encouraged that a lot of the stuff that we have built as an infrastructure really invites more. Does it not? It invites more. So we're going to move pretty quickly. Don't worry. We're not going to it's 3 pages, but we're not going to read. We're going to read it all, but we're going to move quickly. And what Rabbi Blazer did is gave us a broad kind of picture. We're going to drill down into just synagogue life. Fair enough? Synagogue life. So what made me kind of think about this particular idea of the synagogue, did the synagogue this past year change? It was different, was it not? Where was it? It was online. It wasn't good. It was good for some. It was for others who like to be around people. It wasn't so great. For those who like to, maybe myself included, not totally get dressed up all the time and wear a suit, it was nice. Yes, that was nice. How many of you increased maybe your online learning? And what was really interesting is that if you didn't like our services, you could go to another service across the country in Israel. You could learn wherever you wanted. Isn't that right? Well, pretty amazing, is it not? The internet has allowed for so many opportunities, possibilities. The world is changing, is it not? And yet, all of us are very excited to be here tonight. At least I am. Very encouraged by how many people showed up tonight. Are you not? Are you excited that there are people here and we actually have food? And we did it in a safe way. We're encouraged by all of the opportunities and possibilities that are happening right now. And we all come back and we're coming back. I thought it was going to be a huge tidal wave, but we're slowly building, right? Are we not? Slowly building back to at least some sense of a community that we all missed and dearly wanted. But what's the significance of the synagogue? A lot of rabbis and a lot of communities struggled with this idea of what is a synagogue? Can a synagogue be online? What do you really need to have a synagogue? Is it just the people? Is it a brand? Is it the ability to send out messaging? Is it the ability to have the rabbi do more with technology? What is the synagogue today? Is this a synagogue? We have 2 synagogues here. What does it really mean? Let's look a little bit at some ancient texts. Certainly, please bear with me, some of it might be a little outdated. That may be the case. But all of us are adult enough to understand that all of our ancestors and everyone that is writing here is dealing with the same major questions that we're dealing with, are they not? And you're going to see in a very, very real way how they viewed some of the things that we're going through. So let's look at the first one. Do you mind if I read it so that way we can all hear it? And I'm going to move pretty quickly because I know, when I first started really observing Judaism in a very profound way for me, my very first holiday that I really got 100% into was this one. And it was in Minneapolis, and I was 20, I believe, and I was going to stay up all night and study, okay? That was going to be my thing, because that's what we traditionally do. We stay up all night and study. And the community went till about 2:30, and at that time, I still worked on Yontif. I actually had a job. I worked at a bakery, and the bakery opened at 5:30. Okay, so I was done at 2:30, and I had to stay up for another 3 hours. I don't know what I was thinking, right? Or 3, is that my math right? Yes. Thank you. I'm not a mathematician. I was in finance for a little bit, but don't trust me with your money then. So anyways, I stayed up for 3 hours and studied Torah and then went to work. And it had an impact on me that Torah could really make me come alive. It could breathe life into me. And I've just loved this holiday ever since. But I'm also aware that for many of us, this is getting a little late. So I'm going to move quickly, and that's why I'm going to read. Okay? Fair enough? Unless somebody has a burning desire to read. Anyone? Yeah, not happening. Ready? Okay. So the Shulchan Aruch and the Orach Chaim, which deals with daily living kind of things, holidays, and how you do day-to-day life. This is the Shulchan Aruch written in the 16th century. This is basically your major code of Jewish law, meaning how you do things on a daily basis. So let's look at what it says. It is prohibited to fast immediately after the holiday of Shavuot. You can't fast, so Shavuot ends on Tuesday night. You can't fast after that, presumably because everyone's trying to get off the cheesecake that they ate too much, so they're going to go on no. But you can't fast on that date. So here we go. What's the Ramah? The Ramah is just a Sephardic rabbi who added to the commentary. Ready? Look at what he says. And we do not say Tachanun, which is a part of the prayer service, from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Sivan until the 8th day. Meaning we're not depressed at this time period. We're excited. Are you excited right now? You should be. If you look outside and you look at the moon and it's Sivan and we're excited to be here. This is Zman Matan Toratenu. This is the time of the giving of the Torah. Who's excited? You guys ready? Isn't this amazing? Yes. Okay. For 8 days, we're going to do this, which is after the post-holiday, Chagahot Mayim Hilchot Tefillah Unmagnagim. Okay? We have the custom to spread out plants. Okay, look at this. We have the custom to spread out plants on Shavuot in the synagogue and in houses as memory for the happiness of receiving the Torah. Where are you supposed to put flowers? Where are you supposed to put plants? At your house and at the synagogue. Why? Well, how many of you buy flowers for your husband or your wife or your spouse? Anyone do that? I do that every Friday. I bring home flowers for my wife. It makes the house look beautiful. But what comes first? What place should you make look beautiful according to this, before even your house? The synagogue. The synagogue. You should have the same desire, all right? How many people have somebody come in to clean their house? How many people make sure that their house is clean before guests come over? How many people really focus on making sure that your home is clean? We all do. Yeah, your mom does. She really, you just told on your mom. She's very clean. Yeah, she loves it, right? You do that. But what's more important than your home? The synagogue. Do you walk into the synagogue and make sure there's absolutely nothing on the floor? Who does that in your synagogue? You do. You all do, right? Get it? Get it? Before even your house, you're supposed to make sure that it's beautiful. So here, and we're going to read a little more. We have a custom everywhere to eat dairy food on the first day of Shavuot, as it seems to me that the reason is it's like the two foods are taken from the evening of Pesach, a reminder of the Korban Pesach and a reminder of the Korban Chagiga. So too we eat dairy food followed by meat food, and we bring with them 2 loaves on the table, the place of the Mizbeach, and thus there will be a reminder of the 2 loaves that were brought on the day of the Bikurim. All right, I just left that in there because it's interesting, right, that we eat dairy, which we all did. Everyone eat dairy? Okay? Even if you're lactose intolerant, you're obligated. I'm kidding, but you make sure you have the dairy and then you have the meat. And this is the reason, is that it's associated with the temple offering. I just thought I'd add that because it's Shavuot. But on Shavuot, what do? We make sure that we have flowers, although we didn't have any flowers. Okay? Don't mark us down. Okay? All right, so we're going to have flowers and so on and so forth. Let's go to Brachot. Brachot, Aleph Zion, which is 6-7. What does it say? I'm just going to read the English. I'll spare you the Hebrew. It was taught in a Breita, which is a rabbinic writing, that Abba Benjamin said, one's prayer is only fully heard in the synagogue. Anyone pray outside? Anyone pray at home? Don't we have a whole bunch of rituals that we do at home? Friday night, light candles, okay? But here it says something interesting. One's prayer is only fully heard in a synagogue, as it is stated with regard to King Solomon's prayer in the temple. Yet have you turned towards the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, Lord my God, to listen to the song and the prayer that your servants praise before you on this day, following the verse, to hear the prayer, and so on and so forth. So what is this saying? Anyone want to take a guess? What is this saying?
That you need a minion.
You need a minion, good. That's going to come a little bit later. What else? You need to be, what's a minion? 10 adults, right? Some people say 10 men, but we, in liberal Judaism, we accept 10 adults, right? People who are 12, if you're a girl, or 13 and above. We accept that as a minion, correct? Right? We all agree on that, right? Okay, great. So, yeah, what else?
Right up there behind your right arm.
Okay. V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. I am going to be amongst you. That's the proof text. Where is God? Here. How many believe that God is only here? You believe that? No? God is everywhere? God is everywhere. So then what's the significance? I just said, and we all agree, that God is everywhere. But here they're saying there's something specifically important about the synagogue, that the prayer is only heard here, and yet we also do Friday night at home. How many of you, bench licht at home on Friday night? You light candles. That's a good prayer, right? No? Yeah.
I was going to say mostly that because we're all together and we can listen to, or they can listen to more than one voice at once.
Ooh. Good.
It's a lot easier to focus on what's happening than to be everywhere and listen to other people's prayers.
Right. Elements of the minyan. You could hear different voices. How powerful is that? How many on Zoom, if you were in our community on Zoom, we had to mute, right? I mean, it was painful if everyone was unmuted and there were 35 people singing it. How painful was that? No? You guys loved it? It was hard. It was hard to do. But, yeah.
I also like that the Torahs are there.
Yeah.
In our house. This is the house that the Torah lives in. And it's a living, breathing thing that every time we read it changes. It becomes something more special to us as we get older. It has different meaning. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
The Torah is that it's a living, breathing thing and it's here. This is its home.
Yeah.
And when we're here with the Torah, it's a special relationship that we have with God and the Torah.
So good. My wife pointed out how lonely the tours must have been this past 14 months. Seriously. And when we came back, I think in January for our first I cried when the tour, and I'm getting emotional now. This has been the thing that has kept our people together in such a powerful way. Whatever you believe about anything, we do believe that this is a centerpiece, literally, of our tradition. So important. And the Ner Tamid, of course, it represents that. So good, so good. Let's read a little more. Yeah.
Well, isn't God also, it says, let them make me a sanctuary.
Yeah.
So all synagogues are basically, when you pray here, it basically you prepare a special meaning, because you're not just doing it anywhere, you're taking the time to do it here, of all places, and it's there to say your home, it's here, and this is a special place.
What I hear is, isn't the commitment a little different? When you agree, when you had to get in your car, it's a little different. When you get in your car and you drive here, and the commitment to come here and be a part of it's different. And even when you get home, I don't know about you guys, when I turned off Zoom, it was done. There was almost a blank, yeah? Even probably with school or things like that, there was just there was an energy and then gone. But yet here, right, you'll notice, or certainly someone will notice, that there will be lingering, right? People will hang out. Who missed that, right? The parking lot, I know Ken did, the parking lot crew at the end, right? Some people want to get out of here right away. I get that, so I'm going to move on. Okay. All right, here we go. Mishnah Torah, the Mishnah Torah, prayer and priestly blessings. The Mishnah Torah, of course, is written by the Rambam, 12th century. So what are we talking about, 800 years ago? And I'm going to read in English, and then we'll flip over to the next page. So, congregational prayer is always heard by the Almighty. A little different, right, than what we read before. Do you notice the subtle difference? Congregational prayer is always heard by the Almighty, even if there are sinners among them, okay? The Holy One, blessed be He, does not reject the prayer of a multitude. Hence, a person should associate himself with the congregation and never recite his prayers in private when he is able to pray with the congregation. When he is able, or when they are able. Do you see the subtle difference? A little different. One should attend synagogue morning and evening, for only if recited in the synagogue are one's prayers heard at all times. Whoever has a synagogue in his town, now listen up, and does not worship, they are called a bad neighbor. What's going on here? He seemed like he was making it a little nicer, right? A little more fluid, a little more understanding, and then you have this last line. If you live in a community, you have a synagogue in your town, and you don't worship there, you're a bad neighbor. Why? What would make somebody, and let's get away from bad neighbor, let's just say you're an unpleasant neighbor. Bad, good, I don't want to get into all that, okay? Let's get into, it's an unpleasant neighbor. An unpleasant, yeah, Ken?
It's an obligation.
Obligation?
And so you have an obligation to support the community because there's certain things you can't do without community and Jewish law. So if that neighbor's not going to help you do those things, then the community doesn't work.
The community doesn't work. Unless all of you show up, is there a minyan? And how many of us have thought, like, well, they'll show up, someone will be there. And anyone thought that, honestly? Someone will be there, someone will show up early, someone will take care of it. But unless you do, who's gonna? Yeah, Phil, did you have something? Okay, yeah.
It really comes down to not just Torah or like anything spiritual. It comes down to also mental health. If you add in negative things to your life, you're adding in the negative parts, and ultimately you can destroy your mentality with that, as well as damage. At that rate, you can also damage your physical being as well as your spiritual.
Okay. Yeah, Sue. One of the things that I think is important, we're going to move on because it is getting late, but one of the important things that I think, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, we're all familiar with this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. How easy is it to love a neighbor that you've never met? Not a problem, right? Super easy. How many of you really know your neighbors that are next door? Right? Fewer and fewer, though, right? If you've lived there a while, maybe you do, but if you've moved around, do you really know your neighbors now? How about 2 doors down? 3 doors down? You're an anomaly.
Well, I've lived in the neighborhood for 26
Right, okay, all right, but,
There's still a lot of people who weren't my original neighbors, but yes.
Oh, that's
people
awesome.
moved out, and kids are moving in, and
Right.
the whole cycle is starting.
right, we get the point, though. We get the point. How many of us truly know our neighbors? Right? It's a really interesting thing. And how easy is it to love somebody that you really don't know? Even if you maybe know them kinda. You know, I'll take out your trash bins, I'll do, right? We all know that situation. How hard is it to love that person sitting next to you right now? When you know that when you start to develop the relationship, it becomes a little more difficult at times. Who are the people that get the brunt of our naughtiness, get the brunt of our unpleasantness? Isn't not the people that are closest to us? Always? Always? So what is saying here is, where do you, right, truly become a member of the community? Where do you learn how to be a neighbor? Here. Anyone know what it's like? Anyone daven on high holidays, right? And you're really into it. You really enjoy it. Well, here, I'll give you the perfect example. How many people get upset in the middle of the Torah reading or in the middle of davening and people come in and they disturb people? Anyone get upset? There's an actual sign still there. If you can't love somebody in that moment, how is that loving your neighbor as yourself? When we behave as human beings so terribly, we all do it, unpleasant, let's just use that. Anyone been unpleasant to another person before? Yeah. Can you love that person at that moment? And the best place to do it is in community. The best place to do it, right, where we, at least in the Jewish tradition, is where it happens how? Here. Yeah.
Real quick,
Yeah.
my sister is 13 and a half years younger than I am. And I remember I was taking care of her, and I said, go to your room, because you're being a big girl. And she goes, and she's got hair down to here, her butt, and she's wearing her little pampers, and she goes, I'll always love you, but right now I don't like you very much.
Right.
And she swings her hair and goes into the room. And I had to stop from laughing, because I never put it together like that. She put it together at the tender age of almost 3.
Right.
In a way that most adults don't see that. Yes, you might not like that person, but you don't stop loving.
That's right. That's right.
It took my, then, now she's 50-something, but then it was like, wow.
That's the
That was
lesson.
stage.
Great. Let's go to Brachot. Yeah, Sue, and then we'll go to Brachot 6 and 8. Right. You remind me of DeBarney Dofi, right? We're doing all this, right? You shouldn't gossip. And then it's always kind of a joke, like, how long are we going to actually last on that one? Anyone else do this one, right? We say all the things, and it's just like the one thing is the gossip. How long is that going to last? I was just reminded of that. All right, we're going to move quick, okay? Because it's almost midnight. Do you guys believe it? It's almost midnight? No? Okay. All right. On the East Coast. Yeah. Yeah. Ready? Here we go. Brachot 6b. On the same topic, Rabbi Yochanan said, when the Holy One, blessed be he, enters a synagogue and does not find 10 people there, this is your minion that you were talking about, he immediately becomes angry, as it is stated, why when I came was there no one? When I called, there was no one to answer. Behold, my rebuke, I dried up the sea, I make the rivers wilderness. So this is the importance of the synagogue. The synagogue is very, very important because you need a minion. Where else are they going to go? But we have a little bit of a problem. And what's the problem? Why would God be angry? What about a situation where there's only 9 people that God would be angry? Yeah.
Wasn't 10 people what was needed for God not to destroy Sodom?
So, yes. However, that's not where the idea of the minion comes from. But it's a nice idea, but that's not where the minion comes from. Yeah.
You now have 9 people who did the work who aren't going to get the reward. They got dressed and they, walked the shore for the show. And they had to run over because that one person didn't show up.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
The word angry,
Yeah.
is that really truly the word?
Koes? Yeah. Yeah. Miyad hu koes. Immediately. You should feel it. You should feel it. When the Holy One, blessed He, enters in a synagogue and does not find 10 people, he immediately, miyad, right out of hand. Right out of hand, the Holy One, blessed be He, is angry. He's upset, koes. You couldn't show up? How many of you have thrown a party and they didn't show up? They even RSVP'd. Oh, that's a good one, right? Anyone throw a party and you had 50 people RSVP and 25 showed up? Are you upset? You bought all the food. You got a ton of bagels and they didn't show up. Why are you upset? So the expectation is that you're here. How upsetting is it when you look around and, how many people even in a day, you look around and you're like, where is everybody? Where is everybody? If you don't show up, there's not going to be a minyan, or there's not going to be a community. What's it like when nobody shows up and there's no community? We talk about why the JCCs failed. There was a number of reasons. One of it, nobody was coming. And one of the reasons is I can find my Judaism anywhere when there's a lot of Jews. You can meet Jews at the LA Fitness. You don't need a Jewish place to go. Yeah.
Again, this is, I don't think anybody can understand logically what I'm trying to think, because, again, it's them. However, we have something like on Shavuot here that we've received is Torah. And part of that Torah, I would think, are the laws that He has provided us, that we received them, we accepted them. It's our duty as Jews to convey a commitment that when we accepted this Torah. And if we don't do that, wouldn't, at least we as humans would think someone else
Right.
would be upset after we have made a commitment to do something.
Isn't the Torah about a partnership?
Yes.
And what if you have, right, a partner saying, can you do this? And you're like, well, once a month? I'll get to it next week. What kind of partner is that? Lousy partner. These are interesting questions, right? And we do talk about that, right? That we have developed a covenant, or what we call a partnership with God, and there are people that show up and some people that don't show up. How painful could that be? Yeah.
Why the number 10? I know I understand Jews and different numbers.
Yeah.
Why did they decide on 10?
It's a good question. Usually it's a proof text, and the proof text, if you want to look, and I don't have it in front of me, it's 22. I'll look it up right now. Leviticus 22, and I'll read it to you. Leviticus 22:32. I said I was going to go fast, and now I'm sorry, guys. You get a Torah in front of a rabbi, it's not his fault. 22, am I in the right place? Oh. You shall, I, the Lord, who sanctify in the midst of the people. So what does it say, 32? You shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified in the midst of the Israelite people. I, the Lord, sanctify you. So the rabbis make an understanding that word midst is juxtaposed, or I believe it's a gezerah shava, meaning that they use a logical inference that means 10. It's not a pretty answer, but that's what it is. The rabbis use logic to understand that in the midst, that actually means 10. Okay? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Please.
I guess kind of go back to the covenant. I mean, I guess, from early, the covenant was made with Abraham in this story.
Yeah, yeah.
And here's the rainbow.
Right, right.
The implication then is, hey, I'm giving you something. This is a sign of what I'm giving to you. But a covenant is a deal. It's an arrangement. And God said, hey, I'm giving you your blessing, but I expect you to do your part of it. And I think that maybe that's where the anger is. It's like, this isn't a one-way street.
Right.
You don't get all these goodies, thinking that you don't have to show up.
Right.
You better show up. And I think that's kind of what I think about it, the word covenant. And maybe that's where the unhappiness is coming from. You show up and
Does it feel better to be a giver or a taker? Right? We all say giver, right? But my gosh, isn't it easier to take? Right? How many of us take, right, without truly giving? How many people had mango this year? Anyone have mango this year? Anyone have grapes this year? Oh, good. Okay, so the majority. How many of you planted a grapevine? Anyone? Yeah. There's always one. There's always one. There's always one. No. But it's true. There's always one. Thank you. Right? How many of us are givers and how many of us are takers? Seriously. Ask yourself that question. We had one person that planted a vine for grape. I ate grapes. I didn't plant anything. How many of us are givers and how many of us are takers? Okay, so let's read a little more. Why don't we do, it's getting late. Yes? Yeah, okay, one more. Yeah.
The grapes that we, like things that we take from, like in the plant grapes, we eat the overabundance from it. We eat something that comes from it, and we are not hurting it. You're just taking a byproduct from it.
Yeah.
Because if that byproduct falls off, it is no longer useful. We are taking it as useful that the original source cannot use. It is not useful to the original source, so we use it for ourselves because then it goes to waste.
That's like your bar mitzvah talk. What do you think? I love that. We're gonna just All right, let's go to. We're gonna skip. Do you see where it says Bava Kama, and then it's gonna flip you to the next page? We're on the third final page. How many are you excited that we're on the third and final page? Yes. Okay. So let's read there's a little English on where it says Bava Kama 60, but just bear with me. I'll read it. The sages taught if there is a plague in the city. Listen to this. This is really interesting. If there is a plague in the city, did we not just kind of experience a little bit of a plague in the country? A plague in the city, a person should not enter the synagogue alone, as the angel of death leaves his utensils there, and for this reason, it's a dangerous place. In this matter, the danger in the synagogue applies only when there are no children learning in the synagogue, and there are not 10 people praying in it. But if there are children learning or 10 people praying there, it's not a dangerous place. Interesting, huh? And I have to say, their plagues were probably a little more gnarly. And they didn't have at least the science and the information. But we all know that this COVID situation was pretty tough. So what happened? Did we shut the synagogues down? We completely shut it down. There was nobody in this synagogue, so much so there were cobwebs up here, right? From here to here. Completely shut down. And I know Robin and I maybe came in, I don't even remember the story, but we were, I think we were like super nervous. It was like going on the moon, right? Like we were totally masked, 2 masks, 3 masks Robin was wearing. If two's good, three's better. But nobody was here. What is this saying? It's not as though they didn't understand that you could get it from other people. Isn't that right? They knew that. So why are they saying that, number one, you shouldn't go in alone? You shouldn't go in alone. And I'm sure, Rabbi Blazer, you went in alone, right? You made sure that nobody else was there when you were there. I made sure that, like, I made sure that, like, everyone had to call in and make sure that there was nobody in the building. We did that for months. Why is it saying, though, here, yeah,
Isn't the most important part of Hashem in God the creation of the human being? And children are those human beings that God has created, and they are the ones that will recreate and recreate. So they are sacred. So does that have anything to do?
I don't have an answer. You know, certainly we understand children to have and we've already heard it tonight, right, from your sister. I would say it a little differently, that at some point in our lives, we start to think we know better, right? That children know the truth. They don't have a problem saying it. It's just at some point we start to think we know better. And so I think that has something to do with that there's an inherent holiness to children. Did not your kids understand real quick something was wrong, something was off? If you watched them, they knew right away something wasn't good. And didn't they really, on some level, adapt a lot better than we did? They certainly weren't on CNN 24/7 looking to see, or whatever news channel you chose to be on, figuring out whether, right? They weren't looking at the numbers. Are they better off for it? I'm just asking questions, but I think it's important that we kind of understand some of the sanctity that you're talking about. Yeah.
In our add on to the not question part of it, but the statement, one person starts the community. The second continues that community, so you've got a third, fourth, fifth, other people coming and joining. The main reason, in my belief that is God would rather have a community come in to do synagogue and live with the community than have one person there just to be all alone.
Good. How lonely was this for a lot of us? I have to tell you, it brought on a new loneliness for me personally. And I didn't realize it was so lonely until we started coming together again, right? That how I desperately even needed something as simple as just interaction with other people. How many of you miss a hug, really? I think, yeah. Herman, I hugged you tonight. We did hug, right? But how many of us miss that? How many of us have parents, children, siblings that we haven't seen in over a year? And my sense here is that this is this not the utensil that the angel of death is leaving? It's tangible. That's an actual thing you can feel, can't you? You can feel it. You can feel it. So there's no answer here. But I can say this, is that when you're around people, the minyan, and when you're around children, does your heart not sing? And the best thing, I have to tell you, the best treatment, and you're welcome to come here, you're welcome. You got to be careful nowadays when you go to the park and stare at children, I have to tell you. But it is the most uplifting thing to watch kids play. To just go and watch kids play. And then just take a moment. And the highlight of my day is being able to walk, and I'm a rock star. When I walk in and the kids are playing and they just, who doesn't need that? Who doesn't need that? These are the utensils. If you want any kind of idea about how to recover from this, find some time to spend with children and find some time to spend with other people, the minions, so to speak. That's what it's talking about. Yeah.
My nephew passed away this year,
Sorry.
and he was 36. And it was the hardest to
Yeah.
When someone comes over right away, and they start to comfort you right away, and yes, I got a lot of lovely things on text.
Yeah.
It's not, we all know it's not the same
Right.
as having a physical human being sitting there with you, having a cup of coffee and letting you cry. Or, having my brother and seeing him, I couldn't see him for almost a month and a half after.
Right.
Got killed, because I have to wait that long and then you get a little shivering effect.
Right.
But that's such a unique perspective that I wish I never had that.
Yeah. Yeah, the Shiva, huh?
Just to be together,
Yep.
go to synagogue and saying,
Yep. So true. Couple more and we're done, okay? I know it's hard to sit for the chairs. They're comfortable, yeah? Yeah, they're all right, yeah. Yeah, at least we're not in the fold-out ones. Those tend to... All right, let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. Again, we're going back in time. We're on the last page. Yes, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 94. And this is really interesting, because this almost flies in the face of what I just said about having a minyan. Here we go. It's necessary to open doorways or windows facing Jerusalem. Okay, which way is Jerusalem? That way, right? So we need to, if we could just knock this down. Okay. All right, so we're going to have, so as to pray opposite them, and it is recommended for a synagogue to have 12 windows. Why do you need windows? Fresh air. Yeah. Certainly right now it's getting a little, yeah. Right. Yeah, why do we need windows? Yeah. To let in. So practical. Yeah. More inviting. So good, right? Good. 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 Other thoughts? Why 12? The what? Yeah, so I've seen that. Anyone been to a synagogue and seen they have stained glass of the 12 tribes? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. But you need windows. You need windows. Do we have windows? We've got windows. We've got beautiful windows here. Sunlight came in, what was it? Yeah, whatever, the sun comes in. Okay, good. Okay, let's look at the last thing, and I think this for me was really great. And you'll be home within the next 10, 15 minutes, okay? All right, one who stands behind the synagogue, in between them is a window. Even if it is several stories high and it's not 4 tefachim wide and his face is seen by them from there, he joins with them for the 10, meaning the 10 in the minyan. The Ramah, roofs and upper stories, i.e. attics, are not in the category of a house, and the one who stands on them is not joined. So, what does it say? What is it saying? Yeah.
So does that mean if you have a window with somebody who's standing on the other side of that door, and there's 9 people in here and 1 person out there, there's a minion?
Yep. That's from the Shulchan Aruch. Now, you see this, it's like, oh, he's here, so we can start. But I think it's a little deeper than that. Wouldn't you agree? Right? It does work when you got 9 people and you're about to say Kaddish and you want to be able to say the mourner's prayer and you see somebody coming in because they're late, how many people in Jewish time, right? And all this stuff, and, it just happens, and you see them in the window and you can see, and actually we do this here, right? We see it and it's just like, oh, they're here. Or we see them in the window, or we've actually used that here, is that we've used Robin and Carol to count as a minyan, but they're on the other side of the door, right? So according to this, it works, okay? According to the Shulchan Aruch, it works. According to the foremost Jewish law, it works. But I think it's even deeper than that, because have we not been really living in a window over the past year when it comes to Zoom and all these other things and so on? And I think this is one of the ways in which to say you can still be a part of. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. But what's the important thing? What's the most important thing? That you're seen and that you're on your way. That you're seen and on your way. And that to me is the whole part of where we are today as we enter into this new phase. of returning back to in-person services, whether you're at Rabbi Blazer's shul, my shul, the shul down the block, whatever it is time for us to begin to show up and be seen to the best of our ability. And is it going to be perfect, and is it going to be exactly what we think? No. But that we have a little window, and we're going to see what is going to come. So may we all be seen and begin to try and show up as best as we can. Chag Sameach. So this concludes. Please grab some more food. There's food. Please join us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, Rabbi Blazer and Temple Beth Ami, for coming out. We really loved having you here. Take a treat with you.